Hey everyone, welcome back to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's Monday, May the 16th, and we got a nice little 8-game slate here. I got my guest, Hoop 2410. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, doing well. We got what is it, an 8-game slate?
Yeah,
For
nice
Monday?
little 8-game slate here on Monday.
Yeah, one 6 o'clock game, 6 o'clock Eastern game that we're going to pass on. Not a part of the main slate, but we'll discuss all the other 8 games. Yeah, had a good weekend. Ready to hop back into the weekly grind here.
Yeah, man, I had a great weekend too. I crushed NASCAR cash games for like the third straight week, and man, it's just crazy how things work out. I'm glad that I don't watch the scoreboard for NASCAR because I'm sure I wasn't doing well up until like the last 50 laps. So it was a crazy race, and baseball has been really good to me. We were talking a little bit before the show. We're both running really good right now. I've put in, I think, like 3 or 4 times over the last 10 days, I've been top 15 in the slam. So I'm like right there. I'm just so close to having a monster night. I feel like it's going to happen eventually. And hopefully it happens really soon. And hopefully it happens on this slate. I like this slate a lot.
Yeah.
And, we were going to get right into this. But before we get into it, we're going to play some home run derby. We're going to talk some pitchers that we feel like is going to win. But we got to talk about our friends over at fantasydraft.com. Good sponsor here of the podcast, making sure that every day I'm on here and talking to you guys, giving you guys out information for those reasons. Make sure you head on over to fantasydraft.com, give them a check, look and see everything they got going on. They got a $22 tournament daily, usually $7,000 to $15,000. They run qualifiers for their big tournaments on Fridays. It's a great site. I've been lucky enough to take down a couple GPPs over there. I like it because there's only a 15 entry max on a 516 person tournament. So make sure you guys check that out. When you sign up, make sure you use RotoGrinders, or it's actually Grinders as the promo code. And that way you get incentives for a year over on RotoGrinders for Fantasy Draft. And you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600. I'll have my fantasy draft plays as we're breaking down the slate here, but we're going to get started with Miami at Philadelphia. 2 good young pitchers here, Adam Conley against Jerad Eickhoff. I like both of these guys in general. I feel like both these guys are going to be strong pitchers. I don't know if Eickhoff is there yet. I feel like he's a guy that probably still needs a year, but I feel like Conley's a guy we can definitely look at here against the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, I think I like Conley a little bit more as well. The one thing overall that stands out to me on this slate is the lack of standout pitching options. I think there's some viable options, don't get me wrong, but I don't think there's necessarily a standout you have to have type of pitcher on the slate. So for me, I think both these guys are in play. I think both are very suitable plays on multiple pitcher sites, such as Fantasy Draft.
Yeah, like you said, there's no Kershaw on the slate. There's no number one guy. So Conley gets a matchup here with the Phillies, who they've improved against lefties over the last couple weeks. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about how the Phillies were the last team in every category, and they're 26 in WOBA now. They're still striking out at 24% of the time, and their WRC plus is still second worst. So they've improved a little bit. Not enough to keep me off Conley here. The one thing that I don't like about Conley, he's $8,300 on FanDuel. That's a little steep. I feel like it's a good matchup, but I don't know if I'm going to pay that for him in cash games. Definitely a tournament option. Definitely a guy that you want to look at on 2 pitcher sites like Fantasy Draft. He's definitely a good play over there at $16K. Let's talk Eickhoff, man. When Eickhoff is on, he's on. He's a guy that really pitches well against right-handed bats, and when we're looking at the Marlins, the number one bat that we're worried about is Stanton. But Dietrich, Bohr, Yelich, these guys are hitting.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have with Eickhoff is, he had the really, really good start against the Padres early on in the season, and he was absolutely phenomenal. A ton of strikeouts, worked deep into that game and picked up the win. Followed that up with a pretty good start against the Mets. But after those 2 starts, I mean, he's just been very ho-hum, I guess you could say. Nothing spectacular. So hard to get really excited about him. If this was any other slate, I think where there were some standout pitching options, we'd just completely throw his name out the window. But like we both mentioned, there's just not a standout ace to pay up for. So in play, nothing to get extremely excited about. Yeah, obviously the Marlins' best bet is right-handed Stanton, but they also have some guys. Dietrich will likely lead off. He's a solid bat. Yelich coming around, he's solid as well. Like I said, I think both guys are fine as SP2s. I just can't get overly excited about either of these guys as my anchor, my starting pitcher anchor.
Yeah, and the reason that I think Eichhoff pitched so well against the Padres is they're so right-handed heavy, and he's so good against righties. So if the Marlins, for some reason, roll out like 7 right-handed bats, then Eichhoff is going to shoot up my list. We don't expect that to happen. We expect it to be a pretty balanced lineup. So for that reason, I'm not going to say he's not a play. Like you said, there's not a lot of options here. But let's talk some bats. We're going to talk visiting team first. Who do you like here for the Marlins?
Yeah, it's most likely those. I guess the big bet that would stand out would be Stanton. Obviously, I think more of a tournament option than anything else. And Dietrich and Yelich, the two guys that I mentioned. Dietrich price has come up a little bit. He's 3.3K. Still fine paying that. When it comes down to your hitters tonight, you don't really need to be picky with the salaries because you're probably going to save some money at pitcher. So I think he's a fine play there. And Yelich as well. He's 3.7K. Have some interest in him as well. And I guess, looking at the prices on these sites specifically, Stanton is only 4.1K on FanDuel. I think that's a pretty good value option there.
Yeah, do yourself a favor and don't leave him off your stack if you're going to stack the Marlins here up against Eichhoff, because that would just be – and you're seeing the stats with Eichhoff. Stanton's an elite hitter. He can take anybody deep. So don't leave him off. I don't mind him as a one-off play, especially at that price tag. But my first fantasy draft cash game guy that I want here that I feel like is underpriced is actually going to be Derek Dietrich. He's only 6,800 over on fantasy draft on this slate. It's a great play for cash games. Like you said, he should hit leadoff. And what we've seen is the guy just mashes right-handed pitching. Over a 400 WOBA this year, 368 WOBA against righties last season. Has the home run upside with the high ISO over 200. I like him a lot, and I like Yelich and I like Stanton, and I don't think you can overlook Bour where he's cheap. 3,400, a little bit too expensive for me on FanDuel, but if you're on DraftKings or another site that has him a little cheaper, man, I don't mind him as a tournament play.
Yeah, absolutely. Bour has immense upside, some big-time home run upside, so I like him a lot as a tournament play where he's priced up, such as FanDuel. If you can find him cheaper somewhere, I'd have no problem rolling him out in cash games either.
So what's your thoughts on the Philadelphia bats? We both like Conley here. Is there any Philly bats that you want to target against him?
Franco. I'll continue to talk about this guy. I think he's a fine cash game play. He's priced down basically everywhere around the industry, and then in tournaments as well. He has much more upside than basically anyone else in this Phillies lineup. So I have no problem using him in tournaments as a one-off third base option. By far, my favorite option. And with the Phillies, it really depends on the lineup. They shuffle their lineup around a ton, so you really don't know who's going to be at the top, who's going to get a demotion night in and night out. If Cesar Hernandez is up at the top, he's a fine option as well. Relatively cheap basically everywhere, so you can get a guy hitting towards the top of the order in a decent matchup. So like him, but definitely Franco's the one that stands out.
Yeah, Franco's the one-off play I feel like we can target. If Rupp didn't hurt his ankle and he was in the lineup, even if he plays, I don't think I'm going to take a shot on him just because he hurt his ankle the other night. So yeah. I feel like Franco's the guy you want to target here if you target anybody. The very hot, extremely hot Red Sox heading to Kauffman to take on the Royals, Porcello, Ventura in this game. I feel bad for Ventura.
These guys are mashing right now. It's absolutely incredible what's going on. I mean, night in, night out, just putting up a crap load of runs. So they get the matchup here with Ventura in Kansas City. Not the best hitting environment, but I don't think the hitting environment really matters at this point with these guys. Just absolutely mashing. You have to – I mean, if you're somebody that builds a lot of lineups, definitely put together a Red Sox stack. There's no reason not to. I mean, these guys – are on fire. David Ortiz out of the lineup today, and they mashed, 10 runs, no big deal, without basically I mean, Ortiz, I mean, it has to be one of the best hitters in baseball right now. The dude's been incredible this season. So definitely get some exposure to these guys in tournaments. I mean, Ortiz on FanDuel, he's only 4.3K. I mean, that's a really good price tag there. So if you can find anyone with reasonable prices and cash games, fire away. In tournaments, definitely stack these guys up. They're just too hot right now to leave them out.
Yeah, it's not like Ventura's a bad pitcher when you're looking at his stats.
No.
He's a pretty he's probably above average. He still needs to work on a couple things, but he's a guy in a year or so, especially with Kansas City's pitching coach. He's going to be a guy that we're going to talk about for the next year or so. This is just not the matchup. You couldn't pay me to take a pitcher against the Red Sox right now. Ever since last Sunday against the Yankees, they've just mashed the baseball. And when you have a team that's rolling like this, even traveling on the road here, like you mentioned, not a great ballpark, but there's going to be a lot of runs scored in this game. So it's hard for us to say, without seeing the lineup, who we really love for the Red Sox here. Look for price points on different sites. We have a tool here on RotoGrinders. Go to the research, and it'll show you, where people are priced on different sites. And if you see any of the Red Sox players priced down on any of the sites, jump on them. David Ortiz is definitely the guy on FanDuel that I want. If Travis Shaw is in that 5 or 6 spot again, he's another guy that you can look at. But you got to pick your price points. Jackie Bradley in the 9 spot at 4K, probably a really good tournament play because nobody's going to want a 9-spot hitter for 4K. So pick your spots there. Now, what's your thoughts on Porcello? We don't take pitchers against Kansas City, but man, how good is the Red Sox pitching staff with Vasquez catching? That guy just automatically gives a bump to whoever pitching.
Yeah, I mean, Porcello's been remarkably consistent. I mean, I think that's the main thing I can take away from, what he's doing this season. It's been against all sorts of teams. He's done well against the Yankees. He's done well against the Blue Jays. He's done well against the crappy teams too, like the Braves and the A's. So, if it was a different matchup, yeah, I'd consider it. I mean, it's tough to really get excited about taking a pitcher against the Royals, but you look at what he's done this season. He's gone at least 6 innings in every single start and struck out between 5 and 8 guys in every single start. And obviously playing for the Red Sox, great chance of picking up the win. He has a ton of wins this season. It looks like about 6 wins. So, different matchup, yes. Matchup against the Royals, I just can't get excited about it. I mean, maybe in tournaments, but the Royals really do a good job of not striking out, so it really limits the upside.
Yeah, the upside's definitely limited. He's only a 109 favorite. They're pretty much saying it's a pick 'em, but they're expecting what we're expecting. 8.5 total here in this game at Kauffman. That's saying a lot. Porcello, I feel like maybe in a tournament you can roll the dice if you're thinking, the Royals are not the same Royals we've seen over the last couple of years. Yeah. One of their power guys, Moustakas, is on the DL, so you're really worrying about Hosmer and Perez and Kane just kind of base hitting you to death. So that's the biggest thing. But man, it's hard for me not to like Porcello just because I really think he's going to pick up the win, especially on FanDuel. We mentioned the Red Sox. We talked about their bats. Anybody that you want here for Kansas City?
No, it's just one of those situations. I mean, Porcello, can't really get overly excited about him because of this matchup, but on the other side, I just don't want any of these bats. I mean, there's just not much. I guess if you want to take a shot on a guy like Kendrys Morales, if he's cheap somewhere, but overall, I'm just off these Royals bats. There's nothing really for me to get too excited about.
Yeah, like I mentioned it all the time. I love Hosmer. I play Hosmer a ton, especially last year. I'll probably have some shares of him where he's cheap, not on FanDuel at 3,900. I'm paying the extra, what is it, $400 for Ortiz there. Yeah, not going to do that. Atlanta at Pittsburgh, Williams Perez against Jonathan Nice. When I was looking at the slate and breaking down the slate, Mike, I'm having a hard time not wanting to roster Nice here against the Braves.
Don't do it.
That was my instant thought, and then I started looking at it, and man, the Braves are so bad against lefties.
They are bad. They are really bad against lefties, and he should definitely pick up the win. So I'd say if you're playing on a site where the win is super valuable, such as FanDuel, I could see the argument. But Nice is a guy I can't get excited about. This is a great matchup, though. Obviously, at home facing this Braves team. A lot of people say the Braves don't strike out a ton. They're striking out more than people kind of projected they would this season. They're going to have a lot of lefties at the top, but it's Jonathan Neese. I don't know. I have trouble doing it. For me personally, it's only on sites where the win is very important. Is he kind of in play?
Yeah, he's the biggest favorite on the board, minus 175 here. Bigger than Zimmerman, the opening line. And it's only an 8 total, and I feel like a lot of that 8 total is because Williams Perez is definitely a guy we're going to pick on with bats. So, man, I'm having a tough time at 7K on FanDuel, not wanting to roster him in tournament lineups and getting exposure to Boston and then the Arizona game. So, I don't hate Neese. He's a guy that I definitely feel like is going to pick up a win here. When we're looking at the Braves, like you said, they don't strike out a lot is the common thought process, but they're striking out 25% of the time against lefties this season. So the upside probably still limited because Neese is not a big K guy, and he's probably going to end up giving up a couple runs here. But, man, I'm having a tough time not wanting him. We don't want anything to do with Williams Perez, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, this is a pretty bad match. Obviously, the hitting environment here is not optimal. It's more of a pitcher's ballpark there in Pittsburgh. But the Pirates have some bats here that can definitely do some damage. Williams Perez, not a good pitcher at all. The bats that stand out, it's the usual suspects, and there's about 4 or 5 of them, I think, in really good spots. I think Jaso's in play. Cervelli at catcher's in play. All the outfielders, McCutchen, Marte, and Polanco all in play. I definitely try to get some exposure to this offense in cash games. I think there's a pretty good chance they put up a nice number tonight. So obviously really, really like these Pirates bats. And if anyone else gets in there, if Joyce somehow works his way in the lineup and has a nice lineup spot, I'd have no problem rolling him out either. So look for this lineup, see where the guys are. But all phenomenal plays. Play the price point game here. Like Stevie mentioned earlier, the tool on Roto Grinders is super, super helpful just to kind of gauge where the salaries lie from site to site.
Yeah, instantly Polanco stands out to me. When you're looking at Williams Perez, he's a guy that gives up a really high hard contact rate to lefties, 373 WOBA to lefties. Ground ball rate is almost 20%. It's about 15% lower to lefties than it is to righties. Gets a massive ground ball rate to righties, but I feel like we can target some lefties here. The problem is the lefties are really limited with the Pirates, so Polanco instantly stands out to me. Definitely want some exposure to the guys that you mentioned. And Kong. Kong is back, and he's always a guy you can look at for upside. He's a home run guy.
Definitely.
I don't want anything to do with the Braves here. Freddie Freeman's a guy that I've been playing a little bit, but not here against the lefty.
No. There's a very limited upside in the Braves lineup. Not many times we're going to get on here and recommend rostering some Braves bats. We'll make some exceptions if they're playing like Coors Field or something like that.
Yeah, the one guy, if Flowers is starting and he's in the 4 spot, you get a catcher in the 4 spot for $2,200. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying he's a great play by any means. If you want to punt catcher, there's nothing better than a catcher batting 4th for almost min salary. So that's the one thing that I wanted to mention there. Tampa heading to Toronto to take on the division rivalry here. Smyly and J Happ. Smyly, when we're looking at this slate, upside-wise, a lot of upside, but when we're looking at the slate, he has to go to Rogers Center and face the Blue Jays.
Yeah, a guy that appears to be a promising player, and that strikeout upside is immense with him. But this is just about the worst possible matchup for a guy of his skill set, a lefty traveling to the Rogers Center to take on this Blue Jays lineup. Good chance of striking out 6 or 7 guys, but also a really, really good chance of giving up at least 3 or 4 earned runs. So I can't really recommend Smyly. I think he's a really, really good tournament option. If he can somehow go out there and just limit this offense, which is possible, strike out a ton of guys and pick up the win. So I think he's probably my favorite tournament option on this slate in terms of starting pitchers. But for cash games, I can't do it. A lefty traveling to the Rogers Center is pretty tough situation.
Yeah, when you're looking at it, he's faced Toronto already twice this season. Both of those starts were at Tampa. It's 12.2 innings. He's given up 5 home runs in those 12.2 innings. So that's just something to note. Love the Blue Jays stack once again. They've let us down a ton this season, but I feel like this is going to be the highest scoring game on the night.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's going to be one of the lower totals at the Rogers Center. A lot of times we see 8.5, 9. This will probably settle in at about 8 if I had to guess. Two lefties here with good numbers coming in, but this is a really tough spot for pitchers to perform. So I like I said, I like Smiley in tournaments. I like the Blue Jays bats as well in tournaments. People will be off them a little bit because of the matchup with Smiley, but these guys in the lineup for the Blue Jays, Encarnacion, Bautista, Donaldson, all these guys just mash left-handed pitching. So I like both sides of it for tournaments.
So Thursday or Friday, I realized that Tulo was starting to square the ball up, and I wrote him in cash and wrote him in optimal lineups all weekend. Paid off a ton for me this weekend. I'm going to do it again here. He's squaring the ball up. He's hitting the ball really well, and he's still really cheap. The price hasn't caught up with the production. What's your thoughts on Tulo here?
Absolutely. I mean, Tulo against a lefty, one of the better spots in all of baseball. He's priced down in a few spots. FanDuel, he's only 3.9K, probably just about as cheap as he's going to be all season long. So take advantage of that value while it lasts.
Anybody else looking at fantasy draft? Jose Bautista, Tulo, Donaldson, all these guys really cheap over there. I love the stack of the Blue Jays on the slate. So
yeah, another price point that stands out. I noticed on DraftKings, Bautista was only like 3.7K. That's a phenomenal price point play as far as I'm concerned.
Now, J Happ is the favorite in this game at 130. Totally looking past that because when we're looking at the Rays, they can hit left-handed pitching. So yeah. I like the Rays bats here. Just about anybody that's up in the top 4 or 5 is going to be in play for me. The one guy that I want to focus on here, and he's one of my fantasy draft cash game plays, it's Steve Pearce. Yeah. Steve Pearce has mashed J Happ in recent years. And he's mashed left-handed pitching for 2 or 3 years now.
A phenomenal hitter against left-handed pitching. He continues to get it done. The thing I like about him is he hits the good lefties well too. It's not like he's going out there and hitting around Jonathan Neese or something like that. I mean, he hits the good guys too. So Happ's been solid this season, but got to give the edge to a guy like Steve Pearce here. Just a really, really good hitter against left-handed pitching. Like you said, these Rays, all these guys at the top, Souza, Longoria, if Forsythe is in the lineup, even Desmond Jennings, I think he's basically around the minimum everywhere, but he randomly hit second, I think, over the weekend. So all these guys in play for me. I think Happ is a little bit interesting for tournaments. He's been really, really good this season. The strikeout upside is not extremely high, but he struck out 5, 5, and 7 in his last 3 while going at least 6 innings, 6 2/3. So he's going deep into games, which is allowing him to pick up a couple extra strikeouts along the way. So while the Rays lineup has been and is good against left-handed pitching, I think Happ's interesting. I mean, he's been really, really good this season.
Yeah, he was the guy that I wanted to mention, and I'm glad you mentioned him. When you're looking at his stats, everything suggests regression. His xFIP is 2.5 points higher than his ERA. The swinging strike rate is under 9%. The hard contact rate is very favorable for the hitters, but he continues to get the job done. This is a spot that I feel like you could look at him in tournaments, but I'm definitely going to I'll probably have a Rays stack. They get a massive ballpark bump here. Yeah. This is a good spot for the Rays righties.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We pretty much, look for the cheap guys in the Rays lineup, top 5, and then all the Blue Jays righties here. Minnesota at Detroit taking on your Tigers. We got Barreros against Zimmerman. When you're looking at the slate, Zimmerman's probably the guy that a lot of people are going to go to for cash games. I expect him to be a bigger favorite than Neese by the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. He's the most expensive on most sites, and he started out extremely hot, and last couple starts have been mediocre, but he just works deep into games. I mean, he's gone at least 6 innings in every single start. He's gone at least 7 in his last 3. The strikeouts are kind of sporadic. We've seen him strike out as high as 8 and then as low as 1. So really hard to project what type of the amount of strikeouts that he's going to get. But I think he's a pretty safe bet to pick up the win here at home. Tigers coming off a rough stretch, but picked up the win today. So I think they start to roll a little bit here at home against a weak Minnesota team, a weak Minnesota lineup. So I think he's a pretty safe bet here to pick up the win, which is really important on sites like FanDuel.
I agree with you on the fact that I feel like he's going to pick up a win. I do agree with that. He's going to get rocked. I don't know if it's going to be this start. I don't know if it's going to be his next start. It's coming. Everything suggests he's pitching way too good. His xFIP is 3 points higher than his ERA. The swinging strike rate is only 6.7%. The hard contact, he's limiting the hard contact, and there's going to be a start where he's going to miss up on some of the pitches, and he's going to get blown up. Mm-hmm. Don't necessarily think it's going to be here against the Twins, and I do agree with you. I think he's in a good spot to pick up a win. But with that in the back of my head, I can't pay 10-1 for him on FanDuel. I would rather take a shot on a guy like Nice or Conley than pay up for Zimmerman here.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Highest price guy. He's over 10K, like you said, on FanDuel. I'm not overly excited about him. I think he's probably the top. Actually, I don't know if he's the top option. He's 1, 2, or 3, somewhere in that mix. But like you said, I mean, I don't think he's a lock. I don't think you have to play this guy. I'd be fine going a little bit cheaper and finding some bat upgrades potentially.
Yep. Barreros, any thoughts on him facing a good Tigers lineup?
No, I mean, get some of these Tigers in your lineup. You definitely don't want this guy. Tigers bats, not, they've been up and down, but their prices are down for the most part. Miguel Cabrera on FanDuel specifically, he's only 3.8K. You can get JD Martinez relatively cheap. So I like the Tigers. I think probably one of my favorite offenses here today.
Yeah, it's a small sample size, but this highly touted prospect here from Minnesota looks like he has the strikeout stuff, but he's got some work to do. And you don't want to target a young guy against veteran hitters like Cabrera, Victor Martinez, JD Martinez, like the Tigers here. We mentioned Zimmerman. Is there any bats that you want to take against him here?
I think maybe like Sano in tournaments. Brian Dozier appears to be in that 6 hole, so I mean maybe him in tournaments. But I'd say any bat, my favorite by far would be Sano, and just in tournaments.
Yeah, I have to mention Park. He's my man.
Park too.
I love his upside, and he continues to be like under 5% owned. He made me a crap load of money the other night. And then the catcher, the catcher that they called up here from Double-A, Juan Cemento.
Yeah.
He looks like he's going to hit, and he looks like, he has multi-hits in 3 straight games since getting called up here.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I definitely want to pay attention to. He's only 2,400. I feel like he's in a good spot as well.
Yeah, I like that call. No doubt about it. If you want to save some money at catcher, this guy appears to have some upside. I think probably a better tournament option here against Zimmerman. But at 2.4K, you're basically punting the position, and he offers some upside.
New York traveling to Arizona to take on the Diamondbacks. Travel shouldn't be an issue. They had a 1 o'clock game on Sunday, so late game here on Monday night. Not going to really worry about the travel too much. Michael Pineda is not pitching, so when we're recording the podcast, he's on FanDuel site, so make sure you pay attention to that. Robbie Ray is pitching for Arizona, and it's going to be Chad Green. We talked about him a little bit before we jumped on because, it's interesting always when you get a young guy getting called up. He got called up to actually be a bullpen guy while there was a couple injuries here for the Yankees. He's actually going to get the start in 37 innings in AAA this season. He struck out 36 with a 1.22 ERA. With all that being said, dude, I love the Arizona bats. You get a young pitcher that's going to be nervous in his first start, and it's probably going to be a bullpen game. The Yankees have a good bullpen in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, but you got to get to that point first.
Yeah, I got to love the Diamondbacks bats here, and, obviously Paul Goldschmidt, just about as cheap as he's ever been around the industry. Has not, been the same hitters we saw last season. He'll turn it around. There's no doubt about it. At home here, Chase Field facing a young pitcher. I like him a lot. Jake Lamb is a guy, obviously, that stands out. He'll either bat 2nd or 4th. Segura, if you have the money at shortstop, fine option, or second base, depending on his eligibility on the site that you're playing on. And Drury, depending on where he hits. They jerk this lineup around quite a bit. Guys shuffle up and then go back down. So a lineup that we'll really have to see before we can tell you, who the really good plays are. But definitely Goldschmidt, definitely Lamb are guys that you're going to want to target here.
Yeah, Drury, another good game on Sunday, 4-hit game. I feel like he's going to hit second. Lamb's going to hit fourth with Peralta going to the DL. So if that continues to happen, love Lamb. He's actually my third fantasy draft cash game play here. Really cheap over there. Great hitter's ballpark against a young pitcher. Love Lamb, especially if he bats fourth. I actually prefer him hitting fourth than second. He's going to get some better pitches. Hopefully Goldschmidt gets pitched around a little bit by the rookie. And I like it. Robbie Ray, a lefty going up against the Yankees. We talk about it a lot. But Robbie Ray is not anything special. He's definitely a guy we want to pick on here.
Yeah, and just the problem is, the best Yankees bats are obviously left-handed. So I think it makes the Yankees team pretty appealing for tournaments. People avoid that lefty-lefty matchup for Gardner, Ellsbury, McCann if he's in the lineup. So I think it makes this Yankees team an interesting tournament stack. The bats that stand out to me for cash games would be like Starlin Castro. I want to recommend Mark Teixeira, but he has been so bad. So bad. He's only 2.5K on FanDuel, so I think there's some interest there. But a good spot here, obviously, in Chase Field against Robbie Ray.
Yeah, Ray's a guy that has strikeout upside against lefties, so if the Yankees don't really adjust too much, Ray might be a tournament guy that you could look at on a two-pitcher site. Don't really love him on FanDuel. One guy that I do like a lot here for the Yankees is Hicks. Off to a really cold start, but he seems to have got it together over the last week or so. He's been hitting second against lefties for the Yankees. If he's in that 2 spot or if he's in the top 5, he's going to be a great value play, guy that you can look at in cash games because he is a switch hitter, so I don't see him being pinch hit for. So I like Hicks, especially on FanDuel, 2,500. Teixeira on FanDuel, 2,500. You could take the top pitching option, stack the Yankees and Diamondbacks, and might have a good night here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can get these guys for pretty cheap all around, so I like that call quite a bit.
Texas at Oakland. We head to O.co, which is a very good pitcher's ballpark. Sean Manaea coming off of a matchup here with the Red Sox. It's always good for a young pitcher to get beat up because, he has to go through some down times, to get back up, but he hasn't really shown anything that's really impressed me. So I really don't like him or Holland here.
No, Holland's coming off back-to-back starts, just getting rocked. This is a good pitching environment, like you said, but I cannot get excited about either of these guys in any sort of format.
Danny Valencia coming off of a massive game on Sunday. Somebody on this podcast had him in his ECRs for incentives. I don't know who that was. Tooting my own horn, toot toot. He has 5 home runs over the last 3 games. A guy that looks like he's getting locked in. He's always a guy that mashes left-handed pitching. What's your thoughts on him here at 2,600 on FanDuel?
I mean, you're getting a guy that's going to get a really good lineup spot, a guy that's hit left-handed pitching really, really well throughout his career and facing a pitcher that sucked in back-to-back starts. So I really like him. And, I guess the most appealing part of all is he's priced like super cheap everywhere. So a lot to like about Valencia here.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he might be a guy that you could see a really high ownership in tournaments after coming off a 3 home run game. And I say that, but he was really low and he had 2 home runs the other night. So I don't really know what his ownership's going to be here.
Yeah, it's a name recognition thing. People don't really recognize Danny Valencia. So I think we'll keep his ownership level a lot lower than a typical guy coming off a 3 home run game. So I wouldn't be super concerned with the ownership levels. Another guy, obviously, Chris Davis is a solid play here. He's hit left-handed pitching really well throughout his career. Haven't seen much of it this season. Maybe he will get something going. But I think those 2 are probably my favorite guys here for the A's.
Yeah,
I wanted to mention Fagley. Is he injured? Okay, I was going to mention.
Yeah, I was going to say Vogt started on Sunday against the lefty.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to pay attention to. He had a cortisone shot. Fagley did in his knee, so I don't even know if he plays. If he's really going to be a guy I target too much.
Yeah.
Oakland, a team that a left-handed pitcher could dominate, and we say that, and they scored, good runs here against Matt Moore, who's much better than Holland. So if anybody that you see lefty-righty matchup splits for Oakland up towards the top, you could take a shot on them. If they're cheap, it doesn't really matter too much. Now, looking at the Texas side of things, this is an interesting matchup here against the young guy. Ian Desmond, man, he is just straight on fire right now. Multi-hits in 5 of the last 6 games.
Yeah, and then just add on the steals as well. It seems like every time he gets on base, he's taking off and looking to steal. So if you're a believer in hot streaks, which I am, this is definitely a guy that you want to consider. So, the matchup, the ballpark here, not the greatest for hitting, but the matchup's fine. This pitcher does not appear to be very promising. They've moved Desmond into the 2-hole, I believe, so he's getting a good lineup spot as well. Potentially could be low owned too, because the price on most sites is adjusted upward towards some of these top outfield options. So I like Desmond a lot I'd say more so in tournaments, but he's been on fire.
Yeah, and you can look at Beltre, Andrus, any of the righties here up towards the top of the order. And if you throw in a stack, man, don't leave out Mazara or Odor just because they're facing a lefty. Odor, 10 games, 15 game, 20 game suspension coming his way?
Gotta be. Yeah, it has to be something like that. Just it was pretty crazy fight, I guess. I mean, punched Jose Bautista right in the face.
Dude, he didn't just punch him; he leveled him. I'm all for players showing emotion and fighting, and I think it's great for sports, and it gets attention to the sports. So, power for it. Give him 5 games. Jose Bautista runs his mouth all the time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know how quickly they'll put the hammer down on him, but it'll probably at least 10 games.
Yeah, and then they'll appeal it. And anyway, but is there any other bats that you want to mention here?
Adrian Beltre, guy has hit left-handed pitching really well. He had a home run today, so Beltre. But yeah, I mean, anyone else at the top of the order, I think, fine play.
The matchup of LA, the Angels taking on the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. Matt Shoemaker against Madea. I can't even pronounce his name, but he's a Japanese guy with a bunch of nasty crap, and I just like this guy.
Yeah, I like him a lot, especially in this matchup here against the Angels. So you look at that Angels lineup. They don't strike out a ton, but not a lot of guys that can do damage. I mean, outside of Trout, it's slim pickings here for the Angels lineup. So I like him at home. Decent favorite. He's showing he can pitch well as long as he doesn't give up home runs to the opposing pitcher, which he gave up 2 of those last time to your boy Syndergaard. So don't think I'll have a problem here. So like him a lot. Maybe potentially my favorite pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy that I'm looking at probably the most. I love his price tag across the industry. Really good spot here, like you mentioned. And he just has nasty stuff. First teams seeing him, I feel like he saw Syndergaard get up there and maybe laid up a couple pitches. We see that all the time with pitchers, and it's just interesting. Now, on the other hand, I feel like Schumacher is a guy. He's not very good. We're going to target him with right-handed bats. We're going to target him with left-handed bats. We're looking at his stats, 354 WOBA to righties dating back to last year, 328 WOBA. Really high hard contact rate to both hands, and he's not a big ground ball guy. So I feel like the Dodgers are a really sneaky stack here.
Yeah, I think they are too. I mean, I think a lot of people, will be off it. Like you said, it should be pretty sneaky, pretty low owned. A couple names that do stand out. Grandal, I think, is a really solid catching option. Adrian Gonzalez, he's under 3K on FanDuel, so that kind of stands out to me as well. But overall, I mean, this lineup is pretty cheap. I mean, you can get the core parts of their lineup at a relatively low price tag, so it allows you some more roster flexibility if you stack these guys up in tournaments. So I like that call a lot. I'd have no problem picking up some of these pieces in cash games either.
Yeah, Gonzalez, 2,900. You usually don't see Gonzalez that cheap over on FanDuel. Love his price point. I feel like he's a guy that you can definitely look at in cash games in this matchup. Corey Seager is mashing the ball right now. If you you, and if you're like me and Hoop and you believe in hot streaks, Corey Seager is extremely hot. Had another home run on Sunday Night Baseball. So he's a guy that you could definitely look at. Anybody that you want to target here for the Angels, maybe Mike Trout?
Yeah, I mean, outside of Trout, it's just hard to get excited about anyone else. I mean, if you can get, I mean, it would have to be a super cheap price tag on a guy like Cole Calhoun. I don't know. I can't get excited about anyone. It's Trout and really nobody else for me.
That's going to wrap it up here for this nice little 8-game slate. We were talking about something, and I wanted to mention something when we were talking about the Tigers. What's your thoughts on Moya? Steven Moya got the call up, mashed in AAA. I've been playing him. He's min salary. He's been batting 7th. It's a good matchup for him. Before we move on to our home run derby, what's your thoughts on him?
Well, I'm glad they finally called him up. I mean, they need to mix things up there. The offense just looked completely stagnant. And, he offers some upside at the bottom of the lineup, and he's still basically the minimum. He's the minimum on FanDuel, and I'm assuming he's close to the minimum around the industry. They're going to keep him in the order. I mean, he's hot right now. Came off a really big game today. Had 3 hits, double, triple, RBI. So he'll be back in the lineup, and I think he's a fine option. I think he's a fine tournament option. I think he's a fine punt. I mean, I don't know if we necessarily are going to be looking to punt the outfield position today, because there's just it's pretty easy to kind of get what you want. But moving forward, this guy appears to be promising, and I'd have no problem rolling him out there in tournaments.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention Cameron Maben is supposed to be activated. Anthony Ghost got option to AAA, so be interesting to see what the Tigers do with their lineup, because Justin Upton has just not been good, not worth the price of admission. Let's play some home run derby, Hoop. Both of us got a home run on Friday. I don't know where we're at overall for the year. I got to update the spreadsheet, but I'll let you go first here.
I'm going to go with
Stanton, I like it. I'll stick to that game. I'm going Dietrich. I think he's going to go yard here.
Like that call. I'm going to take I'm going to say Mark Teixeira finally gets one out. He's been terrible, but I think he turns it around.
I'm going to go Polanco from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I was going to take him. I will. Let's see. I'm going to go to the Rogers Center, and I'm going to get myself some Josh Donaldson.
I think you take Donaldson every time.
I have to. I feel like every time we do a show, he's facing a lefty.
You know, I could easily take Poppy here and have maybe 3 or 4 home runs up on you.
Yeah.
Between Polanco, Dietrich, and Poppy. But I'm going to go with my tournament call from earlier. I'm going to go Steve Pearce.
I like that.
If you had to pick a pitcher at the end of the day that you thought's going to have a win on this slate, who would it be?
I'm going to go Zimmerman. I know he's the most expensive guy, but Tigers coming back home after a pretty big win here, need to get things going. So I think he picks up the win here against the Twins.
I'm going to go off the board. Jonathan Neese is my guy. You know, he's pitching to stay in the rotation. They have 2 really highly touted prospects in AAA that they're going to call up soon. It's just going to be one of those things. I know one is Glasgow. They're going to call these guys up soon. And Neese is a guy that, if he doesn't pitch well, could be gone. So great matchup here against Atlanta. I feel like he's definitely going to pick up a win. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Hoop?
Yeah, it's just a nice 8-game slate. A lot of different ways to go with the pitching, a lot of different ways to go with hitting. So it should be a lot of fun. Yeah,
really good tournament slate. Yeah. Really good cash slate, because we do have some options and we got some value. So for the most part, it's a really good slate all around. So I feel like we're going to see a lot of different things here. So it's a good slate. You can find Hoop on Twitter at Hoop2410. He's my regular Monday and Friday guest, and always a pleasure to do a show with you, my friend.
Oh, pleasure is mine, all mine.
Well, I hope you stay hot. If you haven't checked out fantasydraft.com, make sure you guys go over there and give them a look. Very kind to sponsor the podcast, so you guys could listen to it every day. So head on over to fantasydraft.com, use promo code Grinders, and like I said, it doesn't suck to have incentives for a year for free over on RotoGrinders for fantasy draft. So with that all being said, we'll be back on Tuesday. I hope everybody has a wonderful Monday and crushes some DFS baseball, and we'll see you then.